Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of Stitch and Chris, and it's going to be a knitting and crochet vlog slash podcast, whatever I decide of which name I want to do it. But yeah, what are the credentials going into it? First and foremost, my name is Chris. Could you imagine if it wasn't? That would be weird. And I've been crafting for about 13 years combined. I've been a crocheter for 11. That was my first craft that I got involved in when I was a teenager. And then I've been knitting for about 2 years and has taken it more seriously since then. And so because of that, the reason why I wanted to do this vlog was because I see a lot of vlogs already and podcasts already, and I love them all. I mean, I just watch YouTube and I keep going on, and it's great to just knit and crochet along to someone to see your inspiration, to get more inspiration as well, and just see different techniques and different yarns and everything that go into all of it. And so I wanted to help join that community. The other reason for that was because I know that the community itself is primarily female dominated, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I love it. But that's just how the tradition has always worked. But the thing is, and I never thought I would actually say this, but for this specific thing is that as a male crafter, I want to bring more representation for the male crafters. And I mean, I watch Jonathan's Days already, and I know that we're out there, but I also wanted to bring more light into male crochet as well. Again, I know that there are crafters out there are designers out there, but I think that there is the market for it. And I also just didn't see someone like myself become as represented as I would like. So that's why we're doing this. And through this, I also want to meet more of the community going forward into all of that. And that's how a lot of people have been doing these for all their time. So being that, what else can I bring to the table when it comes to a podcast? Well, we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over, obviously, everyone likes to go over what they're currently working on, what they like to finish, their future plans, certain things that are inspiring them right now, and we will do that. But one thing I wanted to incorporate, too, was that one of the podcasts I follow and have been following for years, Cast On by Brenda Dane, she used to do something called Today's Sweater, where she would go in and pick out a sweater that she worked on and go over what the pattern was, what the yarn was, what the struggles, what the trials and tribulations were, what she liked, what she disliked. And so I think that would be an interesting concept to do as well, on top of, instead of just me doing here's everything I made in 2022 video, which since I'm now recording this in February, I think it would be a little bit obscure to do that. So that's why we're here, and we'll get to that when we get to it into the podcast corner. So that being said, what have I actually been working on? The first thing that I've been doing is that, like many, I fell into the temperature blanket craze this year. A temperature blanket is not something new. It's been around for quite some time, but for those of you who do not know, let me reiterate once more. A temperature blanket is a blanket that you make based upon the temperature of a specific time frame that you choose. It can be, what I'm doing is that I'm doing the year of 2023. People are doing years of their children being born, that they've got married and everything, different gauges for different years that are sentimental for them. And it's really an interesting concept and a project to go back and reflect on. So because of that, I fell into the craze because Lion Brand was heavily advertising it by the end of 2022. And so I was okay, well, let me actually get into this more. At first I thought they were daunting. I know Tony of TL Yarn Crafts makes one every single year, and I thought, oh, that's a little too daunting. I don't want to do that. And so I thought this year, let's actually plan it. I had been gift crafting for 3 months straight, and I was I had a couple more projects left to do before I can actually work on something for myself. And I thought, well, let's finally get into it. And so originally I picked out a pattern, I picked out the temperature gauge and everything. And I'm in Central Texas, so the gauge isn't going to be that low, even though this last weekend it got into the 30s and it was freezing for everybody. And yet this is the third year in a row I've now witnessed something like this, and we still can't get it together with the power. Come on. But that's another story for another time. But that being said, I'll show you what my color palette is for all of this. And originally I wanted to use Hue and Me, which is by Two of Wands from Lion Brand. And it's a great yarn. It's 80% wool, 80% acrylic, 100%, 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and it's a chunky weight. And I was choosing more cooler tones and neutral tones. I don't like working with warm tones that much, but that's something I wish to challenge myself for the future. But after one night, I was drinking a bottle and a half of wine, and I was watching Frozen 2, and I was incredibly inspired by the color palette of that movie. And it's so different from Frozen 1, because Frozen 1 has a lot of like icy blues and everything. They're darker blues. You have some magenta because of Anna's cape. You have Kristoff, which is like a darker black and everything. You don't really get that much going on. Yeah, you have Hans as like white, but like it's not the color palette I was inspired by. Frozen 2, because it takes place in autumn, is that it's more vibrant. You can get purples, you can get hazy ice blues, you can get different things. And the characters themselves are in different outfits as well, which I was incredibly inspired by. So I started looking at concept art for Frozen 2. I fell in love with a lot of it. And so I thought, okay, let's base it off of Anna and Elsa and their color schemes for that. However, I didn't want to do Anna be all the warm color tones and Elsa be all the cool color tones. That's boring in my personal opinion. So I was painstakingly trying to like put different colors and mix them up. And you'll see, what's it called? There isn't like a color where two are like together. I tried to really space it out. And actually I'm looking at it now and I really did a good job of that. So go me. But here is my swatch. I've already posted about this on Instagram. But this is my swatch for the temperature blanket. I'm not going to weave in the ends because I don't care enough for that. But because of that, you have a good mixture. You have, like, Anna's colors were more of, obviously, the warm tones, but she has a couple cool tones. She has, this color is Smoke in Hue and Me. And her main outfit underneath her cloak is black, and it has, like, golden or yellow, like mustard accents and everything that really pop out. And you don't see that until the end of the movie after her song, The Next Right Thing. And so I was like really inspired by that. Of course, the color Crush is in here from Hue and Me, and that represents her like cloak at the time and everything. And all of Anna's or Elsa's colors, like the darkest I went with was Peacoat, just because like how dark can we get? But I think next time I will definitely redo my gauge for the actual temperatures, because the lowest I've gotten, this smoke color is like in the 30s to the 20s, and like Austin doesn't get that. The lowest we got this year was 17, but that was in 2022, and this year so far the lowest we've gotten was like a 30, so it's not really anything. So I did get to use these past week and I was pretty excited about it. But the rules and the pattern I'm following, what a lot of people like to do for a temperature blanket is that they will do a single whole row a day for each temperature. Now that is why it's daunting, because you're doing 365 rows a day. I split it up into different things. So let me show you where I'm actually going into it. This is the current swatch that I have. This is the current work in progress of the temperature blanket itself. As you can see, it's not like a long blanket. I'm working on it in like a scarf pattern. And so this is going and riffing off of what Tony did for her first temperature blanket, which was 4 strips of a Tunisian crochet panels, and then you sew them together at the very end. And so I'm doing that as well, where I'm making 4 scarves, and then I'm going to sew them together. And the scarves will be made of 3 months each. The rule of the gauge is that I was debating for the longest time, like, do I just take the average temperature? If I did that, I'm not going to get the lower colors and everything. So I found a video where they're saying like, oh, take the low temperature so you don't waste any of that. Take the low temperature until the spring equinox, which I believe is March 20th, or in mid-March at least. And then I'll take the average from there. And then in the fall equinox, then you start taking the low again. So you can work with all of the colors. And so that's why here I was really excited. You get to see all those lower colors. And the pattern itself is amazing right now. Like, I'm pretty excited. And here you can see is where we had the like cold front in the last week. And then every single month is going to be separated by a white stripe. Everyone seems to do that. So I do it as well. And it's not bad so far. The pattern I'm using is like a riff on a grit stitch, where it's like, it's chains of 2 plus 1 to start, and then I half double in the first stitch, skip a chain or stitch and single crochet and then double crochet into the next stitch right there. And then you do on so forth for the entire row and half double in the last stitch, chain one, then turn, so that you have really clean edges. The other thing I'm also doing is that every single Sunday I'm weaving in the ends as I go, so it's not as crazy and not as terrible. But this is it so far. I mean, like, I'm pretty proud of that. I've been able to keep up with this. It's a pretty simple project. You're doing just 7 rows every single Sunday. It's not bad at all. I'm excited to see when the colors actually change and get warmer to use the other colors. But I think by the end of it, it's going to look great. So that being said, if you're working on a temperature blanket, tell me your thoughts, tell me your opinions, and also tell me what inspired you to choose your colors. Like, I really, like, I don't know, like, I was not really about the temperature blanket until I watched Frozen 2, and I was like, so, oh my god, the ethereal process I was having because of Chardonnay was really insane because of it. And I was just like, I'm so excited to work on this project right now. We'll see how that changes throughout the year, of course, but right now I think it's going good. For the project, I actually bought a new crochet hook for it. I got one of the Furls Fiber Arts. Oh god, I can't believe we're doing this like an influencer if it focuses. But it's the Capricorn Streamline Zodiac Series one, and I'm using a size L. I also bought the Cruella Wood Streamline just to see. This is my first time using a resin hook ever. And I don't necessarily... I was hesitant at first because I've snapped a cheap plastic one before, but that's exactly what it was, a cheap plastic one. So we'll see how these go. A lot of people have very much success with it. The one thing I don't like so far is that there is a mild squeak when I crochet, and I don't know if that's just because of the acrylic content on plastic or on resin. So I'll try out the wood one and I'll let you know how it goes. We'll do that update in the next one. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, that's the temperature blanket. The next thing I'm working on, and how I work personally, is that I will work on one whip at a time. I will work on one project because the thought of casting on multiple things at once just... it makes me get away from it. It makes me... I don't like having that rotation other than the temperature blanket that I have a dedicated day to. I call them Sunday sweaters. But what I'm working on right now, the one project, is the Campus Cardigan by 2 of Wands. And that's currently in the state. I started that last week. I finished the back panel. I finished the front 2 panels, and I finished the pockets, and I learned how to do a tubular bind off, which is a lot easier than Kitchener stitch, I have found. I mean, once you get the hang of it, it's not that bad. But right now, I'm working on the first sleeve, and what it is that it's just a stockinette cardigan. I'm using Hue and Me in the color Marine. We're on the sleeves right now. The interesting thing, this is my 3rd sweater I've ever made. The interesting thing is that this pattern calls you to block everything first before you sew it together. The other ones I've made from her are like sew everything together, then block to your dimensions, whatever you got to do. But because stockinette curls, you need to block it first. So I'm interested to see how the curling process will actually stop, and also interested to see how it grows. Now that being said, this is my 3rd sweater pattern, my 2nd knit one ever. I'm making it in the size extra small because the model, Alexandra, on it, she's wearing a small. But the thing is, I remeasured myself, and my other sweater patterns with her have been a little bit too large. And so I'm like, let me do the extra small so that I can actually go into it a lot better, do it not as crazy, and like go from there. If I make the small and it fits, amazing. Or extra small, that's amazing. If not, because everything will grow and blocked anyway, so I'm not really worried. I'm looking at it right now and it looks like it will fit me. And like, I have broad shoulders, so that's what I have, but I don't have like the chest that women have anyway, obviously. And so that's why all the positive ease is there to build in for that. And that's what I have found when making her other sweater patterns as well. Because I've made a crochet one in medium, and I've made her last one in an extra small. So I understand where some of that kind of gets into foggy territory, but we'll see. I have high hopes for this, and if not, I mean, now I know, then maybe I'm a small and go from there. But my build can probably go. And I like my sweaters to be more form-fitting anyway, so that'll be a good time. But the interesting thing is that because it's going to need to be blocked before you start sewing it, that blocking period's probably going to take 2 days the way that I wet block everything. So because of that, I'll probably cast on to my next project, which is the Pioneer Gloves by McClure. Where this inspiration came from was because during the cold front, I was out taking my dog. I'm actually wearing his shirt right now. He's an American Akita. His name is Geralt, from The Witcher. And I was walking him, and they're double coated, and he's warm. He was fine. But my hands were not. And I was like, how have I knit and crochet and not like made anything like that? So I immediately came back to Ravelry. I just Googled what's hot right now and like gloves and everything. And so they're a fingerless glove pattern called the Pioneer Gloves by McClure. And it's my first time using fingering weight for this. And it's my first time using DPN specifically all the way through a project. I've used DPNs before when it just comes to like shaping crowns on like hats, but never for a full project. I've never made socks. So it'll be interesting to see. And the yarn that I'm using is right here. You can see that it has a gorgeous like blues and browns and some like yellows in there and greens, and it's very great. At the yarn, it's from The Knitting Artist, which is a hand dyer in Bryan, College Station, Texas. That's where I went to grad school, and so I was gifted this yarn by my professor when I moved to Austin. And the dyer, she was like, oh, my friend's the dyer, and she was like, let me know what you think of the yarn and everything. And everyone like normally makes socks and stuff out of it, and I didn't want to make socks out of it just because I was like, that seems like a cop-out if I just make socks, which there's nothing wrong if you're making socks, but I just haven't done that yet, and I didn't want to turn them into socks just yet. So luckily I found this pattern. We're going to be making them into gloves, and it's 100% superwash merino wool. Dye lots are inspired by certain pieces of local art in Bryan, College Station. This one specifically is called Sunlit Century Tree by Haley E. Herrera. That's the art piece that it was. And for those of you who don't know, at Texas A&M there is a tradition, and there is a tree called the Century Tree. There's a tradition that you are only supposed to walk underneath it, or with the person you intend to marry, or like your significant other, like that's your one person kind of thing. So there's been a lot of proposals at the Century Tree, like it's a very sacred kind of thing amongst A&M students, and I've never been to it because of that. Like, you will not find me there because you don't want to defy Aggie tradition. That is the one thing. Like, we hold our traditions very high at Texas A&M, so I will fully admit. But I'm excited to use a yarn by a local dyer there and actually see how it works up. And the fact that it was also inspired by something of the campus, I was very like, absolutely yes, very much into that. So I'll let you know how it goes. For DPNs, it uses a size 2, so I got small DPNs anyway from Xiaogu, and so that comes with it, and I'm very excited to use all of that. But that being said, the next project after the gloves, and it shouldn't take me that long, what I like to lovingly refer to as my redemption crochet sweater. So my first sweater ever was the Mountaintop Cardigan by 2 of Wands. And I crocheted it up in a size medium. I got gauge. I got everything. It's ginormous. I wear it around the house. I will not wear it outside of the house. Like, when it was cold this last weekend, it was like a Snuggie for me. I loved it. It's gorgeous. It's ginormous. I will not wear it outside of the house. So this is my redemption one. And I have chosen the pattern, the Nantucket Ribbed Cardigan by 2 of Wands. And she uses color theory yarn, and that's fine. I've used that yarn. It's a great 100% acrylic. It's super soft. It's like a matte yarn. And I just don't, I like to put a type of animal fiber into the yarns that I work with, just simply because the reason why I crochet, the reason why I knit, is because I want warmth. There is a reason for that. I'm trying to be warm. I don't believe acrylic keeps me as warm as anything with at least 20% wool. So because of this, I was originally going to use a regular Woolies worsted weight. And I didn't do that just because they were out of the color I wanted, which was like some type of... It was a maroon-ish color because I wanted to be my Texas A&M sweater. But because of that, I went to a local yarn shop called Hill Country Weavers, which everyone raves about in Austin. And it's a pretty good yarn shop. I went in there and I fell in love with this specific yarn. It is called Taki Yarns, if I pronounce that correctly. Please let me know. And it's superwash merino 100% in worsted twist. And the colorway is Merlot. And it's this like purplish, like maroon color. And so I was like, perfect, that'll be my A&M Aggie sweater. There you go. And again, redemption all the time. It's crocheted. And so the ultimate thing that I want is a good crocheted sweater for a man. So we'll see if this will fit. And the reason why I chose to do this sweater after the campus cardigan was because I wanted to know my actual size when it came to knitting a extra small, a small, all of that, because crochet will stretch, in my opinion, more than knit. So that will give me a good gauge of what I'm actually doing. And the thing is, when I knit all of these things and when I crochet everything, I get gauge. But the fact that it's still like really large, I'm like, I'm doing something wrong here. Clearly I think I knit a little too loosely, so I have to take that into account. But my stitches all look even anyway, so to each their own. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about this. We'll see how long that takes me. I'll probably get started with that in the middle of February anyway. But yeah, and that's kind of there. And so the last thing that kind of this brings us to is what I want to call the learning curve. So this is where I will take a past piece that I have made and we'll talk about it. I'll tell you all about the project, my likes and dislikes, what went wrong, what didn't, all of that stuff. And so the first one is this gorgeous blanket. Ooh, okay, it's this gorgeous blanket behind me. And it's called The Mountain Streams Afghan. It's by Robyn Chachula. And it is I bought this book years ago. And it's called This Land is Our Land. Crochet Afghans Inspired by the Landscapes of America. And it went in tandem with the release of Heartland yarn by Lion Brand. And that yarn is 100% worsted acrylic. It's a premium acrylic. It's a beautiful yarn to use. I've used it in a lot of gifts that I've made for people. Really, overall great. But it's worsted weight. Keep that in mind. And so I bought this, and the majority of the patterns in this book are like granny squares in different ways, and the thought of doing a granny square Afghan is just not in my wheelhouse at this moment. I do not wish it to be. It's not it. So when I saw the Mountain Streams cardigan, Mountain Streams Afghan, sorry, here's the original picture of it. And so I got the colors as close as I could. But the thing is that this is where Dumb Chris comes into play, and this is why gauge is important, everybody. And so Heartland is a worsted weight yarn. Past Chris thought, oh, if I just use the same amount of yardage in a different type of yarn, it'll all be fine. If I get the same amount of yards, it'll be fine. Well, I used Hue and Me, and the colors I used were Magic Hour and Agave. Well, guess what? That's supposed to be, that fits a queen size bed. The original Afghan's supposed to be like for your lap, maybe something of a couch, but this fits a queen bed. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I realized that not soon enough, because when I was halfway through, I was like, oh, this is going to be so big. And I had bought enough yarn for just the amount of yardage for the original, like if I just took Hue and Me's and divided by the original number of yardage from Heartland or something like that. And that's not true at all. There's 20 balls of yarn in that. And the pattern itself goes like, okay, well, that's mistake number one. I would definitely knit to pattern. I used a size K hook in US terms. And, it wasn't bad. That's what the yarn calls for. And so I definitely will size up next time just because everything is really tight in that. But I did block it. I did wash it and dry it. It's fine. It all softened up and stretched. It's no big deal. And so what the pattern is that to get the waves and achieve that, instead of cutting your yarn at the end of each strand and then sewing them all together, you bring and carry the contrast color over your last one so that it's like linen stitch kind of. And like when you're working in tricolor linen stitch. So because of that, I was like, okay, should be an easy pattern to do. And it is. You'll do a single crochet in the color B, which is agave at this point, and then color A, Magic Hour, the blue one, you'll do to get the waves. It's two different, on top of two different rows of single crochet, half double crochet, 3 double crochet, or like 5 double crochet. I forget how large they are. Then half double crochet, single crochet to get that wavy appearance. And then from there, you bring the contrast color up and the single crochet and everything. And then to go 2 rows down, you will do a single crochet over the 2 rows to create a spike stitch. And that's where you get this individual blocks of the waves. And then on top of that, you do a really nice border using the X stitch, which I believe is like, it's a riff off of a triple crochet or a treble crochet, where you get the treble crochet up, you use an X stitch, a Y stitch, and a P stitch, and it's all the same thing, just different variations, where like you'll treble crochet, then you'll chain, or then you'll double crochet into the middle of a triple crochet to create different types of cables. It's a whole thing. But I was running out of yarn at the very end of it, and I was not going to buy any more yarn to put into this blanket to just make it. You're supposed to do 2 rounds of that X border, and I only did 1. Because, again, crochet eats more yarn than knitting. And I was like, screw it, we're not doing this anymore. Like, it's large enough, it does the job. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous piece of an heirloom piece. It really is. And a lot of my friends were like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, it keeps you warm, it does the job. But like, never again will I just think like, oh yeah, bulky weight will be the same thing as worsted. Said no one ever but dumb Chris. So like, okay. Would I do it again? Would I recommend the pattern? Yes, in the exact yarn weights that it's appropriate. I think that would look beautiful in color theory, and you would get like a nice like lapgan kind of thing, and it'll just be very nice. But like overall, you learn a lot through it, and yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. We could all see. It's a good time. It's a great heirloom piece. But yeah, that was the Mountain Streams Afghan. But yeah, well, we reached the end of everything I have to talk about here. And if I'll keep making these, I do want to connect with the community more in that, and that's why I wanted to start making this again. And so because of all of that, if you like any of this, please, you can subscribe if you want to. I'm not going to say like, comment, and subscribe, but like, please reach out if you want to do any of that. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at stitchin.chris. Stitchin.chris. It'll come up. And so, yeah, see anything on there you like. Nothing really else. Just me rambling, saying everything else. I'll probably make these again. Haven't decided if I want to do it monthly or bi-monthly, depending on where I'm at with the crafting. And I also don't want to have to force myself to make things for this specifically. But yeah, overall, having a really good time doing it. I'm checking off a bucket list item saying I'm finally going to start the vlog, and yeah, here we are. So thank you for watching, everybody. And yeah, tune in to Stitch and Chris whenever I decide to make them again. So thank you.